Welcome to Small Biz Matters with Alexi Boyd. Whether you're listening live on the Community Radio Network or via podcast, here's the show where you learn from experts, be inspired by journeys and discover more about making your small business a success. I'm Alexi Boyd, broadcaster, advocate and small business owner. Let's meet today's guests. So many would say 2020 may not have been the perfect time when it comes to setting up an art gallery in suburban Sydney, but it was the perfect time to bring together community, support local small business, and offer a platform for creative minds to flourish in a difficult time. So realistically, it was the perfect time to establish a suburban art gallery. So what does it take to set up a creative space in the middle of a pandemic and make it a success? With a background as a teacher, artist and creative, Melony knows how creativity can both foster innovation and support the community. As she states, the art-making process nourishes, challenges, provokes, humbles and provides grounding and perspective. Coupled with a desire to provide artists with a space to shine, Melony recognised the potential of the Epping community and the resilience of its artists to create a space in which the whole community could benefit and prosper. Today, she hopes to help other businesses to learn from her experience, her innovation and her creative success. Welcome to the show, Melony.
Thank you for having me.
It's really awesome to have you in the studio. I love having people in the studio because it means that I can speak to them as opposed to onlining with them or whatever it is, the words that we're using at the moment. But it is lovely to have you in the studio. So firstly, tell me a little bit about the gallery and how you got it set up, but also why that space, why suburbia in 2020?
Interesting. So, we opened the doors on the 28th of September 2019. We had no idea what was ahead. We had a month of, everything sort of flowed organically. And then things got, we had a really horrible summer with the fires and floods. And then the lovely COVID.
I've never heard anybody else describe it as the lovely COVID decided to drop on our doorstep.
Yeah, well, I mean, you start a small business and after 20 years of dreaming and waiting and planning, and then, you're hit with this, the C word challenge, beyond what I'd ever imagined. I spent many months teaching myself how to put together a website and sourcing or seeking out different talented artists and teachers who could facilitate, and different mediums, different lessons, who were passionate, who shared the same vision as myself. I did a lot of research into that and also went with, my gut. And surprisingly, I feel so blessed that organically it all just came together and people seem to find me and we all were just aligned and which provided, such differentiation in regard to an opportunity for people to connect with art on so many different levels from every angle. Like there seemed to not be anything that was thrown at me in terms of, I'd like to try oils or I'd like to try drawing or I'd like to try photography. Every time someone suggested something, I was really inspired to sort of research it and seek someone out who could facilitate and differentiate. And all of this sort of was happening simultaneously with these challenges where, we were going to lockdown and I had to go online and, at the same time, all these artists that are on board, we have 16 at the moment, but at the time we had 12 and they were all very supportive and everyone sort of put their hand up and said, hey, I'm willing to stick around and what do you need? And
It's really community at so many levels. You're creating your own community of artists to support one another. You're embedding yourself in the community in a suburban environment to create, a piece of community that's not been there in the past. But you're also providing, I guess, nourishment and support for the greater community, not only of artists, but as a whole for humanity. I mean, that's what art really does.
And then for me, it's it's reciprocal. It's
the internal community.
Yeah, the thing is, everyone that works at Gallery 1111 is a professional, and they're my colleagues. I learn from them, if anything, and I'm in awe of their talent and their enthusiasm. And, as I'm inspired as an artist by people's enthusiasm for something for their subject, whether it's gardening or even bushland, bush care, or if they're an activist for something that's really dear to them. So I would see that in these artists and these different mediums that I don't work with, and the way in which they nurture their own practice and then, translate that into a lesson that helps someone connect to that and hopefully, move forward with it in their own home or go on their own art journey. I mean, I'm constantly taken aback by the other artists, their enthusiasm and their dedication to being professional and but also being very personable. That was always what I had in mind for the gallery, that it was a safe space, that it was a healing space, that it was a space where you could come and have a conversation about an exhibition, about a body of work, about the narrative, about the artist's practice, the blood, sweat and tears behind the scenes, that I could, provide a connection between the artist and the audience, that they'd come together rather than, come in and sometimes I'd go to a gallery myself and I'd really want to know about the artist. I'd be going home and doing my own research because I think, wow, I'm so inspired. I wonder how did they get to this point? Mm-hmm. So I always had this idea that would be my job, and I do that. I try and do that to the best of my ability, and I try and honour their journey.
And you do talk a lot about honouring them and their work and their journey and their space. And that's obviously very, very important to you. But how do you make the decision about what that space is going to look like? So for me, when you're speaking, you're talking about creating an educational space and an information space and a community space. Does it just come together over time, this idea of the gallery, or did you pick up how someone else has done it before? Did you have a mentor? How do you put together a community space?
It's really interesting. I had actually had my work many years ago in cafes. I still do have some prints and whatnot, but and the local community in Epping was just always so supportive. I recall one particular time where a piece of work had sold in a cafe, and it was over a decade ago, and I went to replace it during the day, and there was a beautiful young lady having a coffee, she was having a cup of tea or a drink with her mum, and I could feel her watching me replace this work, and her mum sort of said, she's a big fan of art, and she just very, confidently got up and started asking me about the behind the scenes. And I ended up spending about half an hour, and she was so inquisitive, and she was just so, she lit up, and I just had this, aha moment where I thought, wow, how lovely to be able to share what I do and what inspires me and how I actually came to create this. And maybe, just maybe, she'll go on and that may inspire her to do it. And all these collective, experiences within the community, I suppose they contributed somewhat to me creating the physical space. I started thinking about, what would be a welcoming space, hence the big glass walls at the front that I can open up. It's a light-filled space. It was always important to me that it was a sustainable space and that it was a positive space, and people comment about, the amount of light it makes them, feel good. And I don't know, every experience that I had in the community tended to I collect these experiences, and they then, I suppose, helped me work with the architect to create the space. I just wanted it to be welcoming, and as I was welcomed as an artist in the community, and I'm just eternally grateful for that. I'm down in the local bush every day. That's one of my series, the tree series. I've named the trees, and we do free walks and tours down there, connecting people to land. And
so it's very important that you understand, I guess, the surroundings if you're thinking about setting up such a community space, that you really understand, the community you're working with. That's obviously crucial, but also the environment and the space around it. Now, I wanted to ask you, because yours is very unique. You have built this space, this gallery, and my understanding is it's off the back of your home, so it's very much part of your personal space.
Yes.
How did that go with the whole compliance thing and the building thing and creating a business from scratch thing? I mean, that would have been so many hurdles. How much time did it take you to get through all those compliance hurdles?
At least 18 months. There was a few obstacles in terms of compliance and boundaries and having to go back and forth, and just, working with the architect and the council and making sure that, we were ticking the boxes and doing the right thing. And then, of course, with building and insurance and, there's so many different things to consider. And it was everything was a learning experience. And when you're new in this, it's just important to have lots of support and people that you can, who have maybe have had their own business or have their own business, or, that have this knowledge, because really I was literally starting from scratch. I mean, all I wanted to do was paint and share other people's journeys. So I had my vision, and that was quite, tight. But then all of a sudden, there's all these different things to consider. So I feel like it's just been this huge learning experience. But people have been very forthcoming with help and, educating me.
What sort of people? What sort of people did you see?
Mainly business owners, not specifically in the art world, but just people who have started from scratch. I have a few friends who moved from corporate years ago to, their own business, and they've just been so helpful, just even in as far as, creating or introducing me to different networks. And
so not so dissimilar from people who create or start their own small business, which might be, say, a consulting arm or retail or something we think of more typically when we think of small business. They were still able to give you that advice and support. But who did you turn to really understand the whole starting a new art gallery in suburbia? Or was that very much just jigsaw pieces falling into place?
Yeah, I think it was jigsaw pieces.
So you're going to be the next mentor for the next person who comes along.
Look, it was jigsaw pieces. But that being said, like I mentioned earlier, all of those, amazing artists, they all have they're not just artists. That's just one part of their jigsaw puzzle. They are business owners, and they are also parents, and, they have different connections, and they all brought forth, a wealth of experience. And, I'm very grateful, and I'm still gaining from that experience. I feel like collaboration, that was always part of my vision, but it's just gained so much momentum, and the level of enthusiasm from those, who have, stood up and wanted to collaborate. It's just forever evolving and growing, and possibilities are just endless. And I just think if anyone is starting a small business, collaboration, I think, is just, it's a gift. And when you can find like-minded people, who share a passion and share your dream, it's so powerful to work together, put heads together, and and that support as well, especially with COVID. I recall having, when we first went into lockdown, I spoke to one of the artists, Teresa Small and Sophie Horn, and we both came up with this, on Zoom, to have a supportive little meeting every Wednesday where we could all be, behind the scenes still painting in the background, but just have a chat about what's going on and what our challenges were that week and how we were feeling. And, the feedback from all the artists was, I actually couldn't wait for that Wednesday. We just needed to just talk about what was going on, because it was quite surreal. I mean, it's like the world sort of came to a standstill. It was, and everything was put on hold. But having that collaboration, we still felt like we were growing together and supporting one another, and that just gave that little bit of light. And so, again, really grateful for that, for my colleagues.
With the aspect of collaboration, that can sometimes be tricky, because you've got lots of people offering you lots of advice, lots of bits and pieces. And when it comes to the creative side, this is very much your vision and your baby. So how do you take all those bits and pieces of ideas and gently accept some of them and reject others while still keeping in line with what you envisaged? Because I'm just seeing someone walking through your space and saying, oh, you need more indoor plants, or, you need to get rid of that wall because it's stopping the light from coming in. You've opened yourself up to all this assistance and all these opinions, how do you gently massage those relationships to ensure that everyone's kept in the loop?
That's such a good question. And even when you're asking that, as you're asking that, I'm recalling all of this advice that made me feel a little uncomfortable at times. Look, I think the best advice is to allow yourself to get uncomfortable. I think the advice / constructive criticism, retrospectively, I think I can recall being, having that feeling of, no, I've just poured everything into this and,
you're unpacking it.
Yeah. But I'm really grateful. I'm grateful for every bit of advice. I think that as uncomfortable as I may get at times with it, I've definitely taken it on board and it's been quite positive. So I think it's just about taking it on and seeing it as a bit of a gift and then working with that. And quite often when you're immersed in something, you're quite emotionally attached to it. It's like an artwork. You don't see where it could actually benefit from a shifted perspective or see how, that you don't see the corners of things or, because, you
and
just
opening
put so
yourself
much in.
up to having those opinions come in means that you're always open to change and to improvement. But it's the same with all small business owners. You really grab hold of something and you're so heavily involved that anybody coming and suggesting something can be sometimes construed as criticism. So I guess it takes that certain type of personality to really well collaborate with those people. We're going to take a quick break here on Small Biz Matters here on Triple H 100.1 FM. When we return, we're going to speak to Melony a little bit more about the concept of innovation and why it's so important that the creative community and the artistic community has so much to give in that regard. We'll be back after this.
This episode of Small Biz Matters is proudly sponsored by the Australian Small Business and Family Enterprise Ombudsman's Office. Led by Kate Carnell since its establishment only 4 years ago, Aspifio has provided education, advocacy and support, including free assistance if a small business is involved in a dispute. The office also provides assistance for disputes that fall under the franchising, dairy, horticultural and oil industry codes. Kate Carnell, as an independent advocate for small business owners, has the legislative power to influence our nation's lawmakers, ensuring legislation and regulations are put in place to help small businesses grow and, in these times, survive. Small businesses are the engine room of the economy, and it's Aspifio's role to do all they can to ensure they have the freedom to innovate, employ and thrive well into the future.
So today we're talking about art. We're talking about the concept of innovation and how to set up an entirely new creative business in the middle of a pandemic, which is what we were talking to Melony before the break. Now I want to speak to you, Melony, now about the concept of innovation and where artists and the artistic world and creativity falls in that, because absolutely, just because you're not a fintech company doesn't mean you also go through processes of innovation. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that especially having a space, I'm constantly challenged to think of new ways of reaching different audiences, and with that, I try and when I plan the year ahead, I try and organise a different exhibition, different subject matter, different medium each month. When it came to COVID and lockdown and we couldn't exhibit, I had the option of going online, but didn't feel like that really fit the vision of my space, because I do like to have people enjoy a holistic experience. For example, it may tie into the food that we have at the time, or the connection between the artist and the artist having the conversation with the person on site. It's quite important. During lockdown, in terms of innovation and me having to go online, I had to, be constantly thinking of new ways of keeping things afloat and maintaining. And for example, I had a conversation with someone in the community, a lovely supporter and collector of my work. She had mentioned that her family usually went to Hamilton Island at that time, and they were quite, it was quite disappointing for the kids, especially, that they couldn't go. She was showing me some beautiful images from their past holidays, and I said, well, why don't I come up with a Zoom workshop for the four of you. So, you know, 2 children and 2 adults that would facilitate for all of your, you know, levels of experience, and you could paint that one scene. So I sort of work, and we did. We worked out this this lesson for them, and it was just wonderful. It was wonderful, and I'm grateful for being invited via Zoom into their home to see them all, you know, and to see the way they related to one another during that whole process, and then. The feedback was so lovely. So then that became a bit of a thing where it was, you know, anyone in the community, if you feel like, you know, you want to jump online because you're at home and you want to break, and became a sort of father and daughter, or, you know, a family situation. And then I came up with a couple of, you know, in reference to innovation, a couple of other lessons where they were very achievable in terms of, you know, still life, mixed media, collage. I was teaching myself. I'd never really experienced a lot with collage, but a lot of play, a lot of experimentation, and a lot of planning to ensure that the other person who I had the art materials delivered to, or art scene at West Ryde, they facilitated little packages where people could go and pick them up. And not have to have contact, and we're all very COVID safe, you know, and then I'd jump online and I knew exactly what they had in front of them. And it was all, I think the hardest thing for me was not being able to lean over their shoulder and say, if you just sort of tweak that, or, you know, but people were just so beautiful. They were so supportive and patient, and they knew that I was still learning, and it was all, you know, everything was new. And we worked together, and I feel like in those online workshops, I actually learnt a lot as well. And it gave me a whole new level of business that I would never have had I have not gone through those challenges. So that was great.
So it's like tech, planning and play, those really important parts. But I think the play element is something that artists and the creative world do so well, which meant that the innovation takes on a life of its own, as well as being something new and different to what you would normally do in the, you know, the typical art space. And so I guess that's helped you grow as a business, and it's opened your eyes to other ways that you can flourish after this is all over. You can continue to do those things and reach out to people.
Absolutely. And it certainly widened my audience. You know, it's interesting because I do speak to quite a few people every day all over the world, you know, via Instagram and whatnot. We keep up with each other's journeys, and especially with the gallery. And it was great to have that. And all of a sudden, you know, you're seeing people face to face rather than just through text. And so it definitely, through that, it was scary because it was all this new technology that, you know, constantly, even buying a webcam and setting everything up. But again, those beautiful artists that I work with, a couple of them are very tech savvy, and they came and helped out. So, you know, that collaboration came through again, that support. So, I think it would have been a lot more difficult had I not had that support.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. I do hear what you say. So tell me about what's happening in the gallery at the moment. And then a little bit about how people can find out more about the space and come and visit you.
Okay, so I actually have my work in there. I have the Tree, Ocean and Floral series that I've been working on forever. So I'm inspired by my local surroundings, that being the National Park and local gardens, but also the Ocean series. So I have that on display until the 20th of February, where Jane Latella then comes in, amazing watercolour artist, and she has her beautiful exhibition opening on the 20th of Feb, and that's called The Nostalgic and the Iconic, and that's all about her memories of her childhood, looking at spaces between Bondi and Sydney Harbour. That's very exciting. So that will be for 2 weeks. And then we have wonderful Murray Walsh coming in, and he has his exhibition, The Smell Before the Rain, or otherwise known as Petrichor. And that's all about the break of a 3-year drought from Central West.
Oh, wow.
And about the colours and the textures flourishing, and a lot to do with the small farming communities there. And then we moved to 2 wonderful months with Uncle Bruce Shillingsworth, who is our most recent mentor and artist for the space. So he's actually been doing our Connection to Land down with our free tours of the national park, where he gives an Indigenous perspective. So he's a water activist for the water for the rivers, and he's wanting to raise awareness toward what's happening with the rivers, the Murray-Darling, and he'll be working with other artists with a group exhibition where artists will come forward and gift an artwork for an exhibition, and then he'll have his solo exhibition mid-year acknowledging and honouring his ancestors. And we have a range of artists. We have Teresa Small, Rebecca Brady, Jane Blundell. I'm collaborating at the end of the year with Bronte. It just is ongoing. Every month there's something else happening, something that's different from, the month prior. Workshops galore, 3 to 4 workshops, maybe 5 a month, depending on what people are asking.
Sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
So tell us where is exactly the space?
So we're a corner of Moulton and Norfolk Road in North Epping, Norfolk Road entry. So we're down, in the leafy suburb of North Epping, absolutely beautiful. I do have opening hours in terms of weekend, fixed hours, unless there's a workshop on. And sometimes we leave the doors open when there's a workshop on, so you can, come in. It depends on, how much the participants need to concentrate. But 11 till 3 on the weekend generally, or I'm more than happy to, if I'm around, come and open the doors. Just, if you text me or email, info at gallery1111.net. Or we have our website, gallery1111.net. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, LinkedIn, and always wanting to connect. And I'm always open to suggestion in as far as, new workshops. Challenge me. The most recent one was someone came up with anime. We need anime for, 12 to 18-year-olds.
Yes, what a great idea.
Yeah, well, we're into our second holidays with that. So we have the wonderful Janine Quinto, who's coming this Thursday to facilitate that workshop, all dressed up in her cosplay outfit. So,
gosh, so much. Yeah. There's just so much going on, and I think that's what really makes the success of a community centre and a community hub, which is what you've created so successfully. Look, thank you so much for coming on Small Biz Matters today. It's been a joy having you on the program, listening to your journey and your inspiration and the way that you've collaborated with other creative minds as well. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much.
This week's episode was proudly broadcast from Triple H Studios in Sydney, Australia, and sponsored by the Office of the Australian Small Business and Family Enterprise Ombudsman. If you've enjoyed listening, go ahead and give us some thank you stars on your podcasting platform. It would be much appreciated. Then head to the Small Biz Matters website, where you can listen to over 170 episodes, read more about our speakers, and find out how to become a media partner. See you all next time.